Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today's topic is photosynthesis. So let's start. Can you guess from where do trees get their masses? Long ago, they thought that the mass of the tree came from the soil, but of course, this wasn't true. Why? Because if this was true, there will there wouldn't be any soil left, and there would have been a hole around trees because they feed on the soil. So if this is not true, then from where do the masses of the trees come from? A scientist called Van Helmont did an experiment to see from where do masses of the tree come from. He got a pot containing dry soil, and he weighed carefully the mass of the pot with the soil, and then he didn't add any soil. Then he weighed a plant, uh, and he uh, put it in the soil and left it for 5 years, and he didn't add anything except water. After 5 years, he noticed that the mass of the soil is almost the same. It didn't change, and the mass of the plant greatly increased. So, from where do this mass from where do this mass um, did this mass come from? So he concluded that this mass came from the water because he didn't add anything um, in the 5 years except water. Afterwards, we learned about photosynthesis, and we know that the mass of the trees do not come only from water, but it also comes from the carbon dioxide in the air. But it was a conclusion at his time that he concluded that the mass of the tree didn't come from the soil, and it came from water, and this was part of the truth. Afterwards, we realized the second part, which is that the mass of the trees come from the water and from carbon dioxide in the air. This experiment proved that the mass didn't come from the soil because the mass of the soil didn't change throughout the 5 years. Okay, as we all know that the plants make their own food, they are able to make their own food. What do they need to make their own food? They need carbon dioxide from the air, water from the soil, and they do a process called photosynthesis, and they make their own food, which is glucose, and also they produce oxygen gas. So the plants make photosynthesis process to make their own food. They use carbon dioxide from the air, water from the soil, and they make the food, which is glucose, and they produce oxygen, which is important for us to breathe. Okay, from where do the energy for photosynthesis come from? It comes from the sun. So the plants trap the sunlight. Which part exactly in the plant trap the sunlight? It is the chloroplast. The chloroplast contains a green pigment called chlorophyll that trap the sunlight. So the chloroplast present in the plant cells, especially in the leaf cells, they trap the they contain chlorophyll that trap the sunlight to make food for the plant by photosynthesis process. Okay, so this process occurs inside the chloroplast of the leaf cells. The photosynthesis occurs inside the chloroplast of the leaf cells. So the photosynthesis changes light energy into food. It comes from the Greek word photo means light, and synthesis it's to synthesize or to put together. So you are making something from light, which is food. So photosynthesis means synthesizing from light. You're synthesizing, you're making food from light. It's as if you're cooking and you're adding some ingredients to make food and oxygen. Okay, so what is the equation for photosynthesis? It's carbon dioxide plus water gives glucose and oxygen. You cannot write in the equation plus light energy because uh, Sunlight, it's a form of energy, it's not a substance, so you cannot write it in the equation. You can simply just put it over the arrow and that's it. Why? Because it's not a substance, okay? The energy, it's not a substance to write it. And I write in the equation only substances. Okay, so let's check what are the four things that the plant need to make photosynthesis. I need carbon dioxide, water, chlorophyll, and sunlight. Okay. Can we write together the equation? Yes, simply carbon dioxide plus water gives food and oxygen, and I need light energy and the chlorophyll inside the chloroplast. This is correct. Thank you. To wrap up photosynthesis, the plant, it's a process by which the plant makes its own food. It uses water from the soil, carbon dioxide from the air to make glucose and oxygen. And this process needs energy that the plant takes from the sunlight. So the reactants in photosynthesis, the substance that you start with is carbon dioxide and water. The products are glucose and oxygen, and this process occurs in the chloroplast. Okay, how do the oxygen leave the leaf cells? It leaves the leaf cells by diffusion, okay, through holes in the leaves called the stomata. While the glucose that is made is converted into starch, okay, and at night when there is no photosynthesis, the starch is returned back to soluble sugars, and then it is transported to all the plant parts, and every part use it to make what it needs. For example, if it's a potato plant, then uh, the potato tuber is going to convert the sugar into starch grains and store it inside it. Okay, so once the glucose is made, it is converted to starch, and once it's dark, it's returned back to soluble sugar to be transported, because you cannot transport starch as it's a large carbohydrate, but what is transported is always the small soluble sugars. Okay, okay, what is a biomass? Bio means living, and the mass, it is the mass of all the substances that are made from living organisms. So a plant biomass, it is the mass of the substances that the plant made. For example, it's like the glucose, the starch, um, cellulose, everything that the plant makes afterwards from glucose. It can be cellulose to make the cell walls, it can be starch, it can be sucrose inside the fruits, um, proteins. All of these things are called biomass. So bio means living, mass, it's the mass of the substances that is made by a living organism. Okay, so photosynthesis, it is the process by which the plant makes its own food, which is glucose. What is the difference between photosynthesis and respiration? Respiration or cellular respiration, it's a chemical reaction that breaks down food, which is glucose, to get energy. So it's exactly opposite to photosynthesis. And the respiration happens in all the cells and it happens all the time. So photosynthesis happens only during day, but respiration happens day and night. Okay, so photosynthesis, it happens during day only, but respiration, it happens all the time in the plant, day and night. The plant respires all the time. All the cells of the plant need energy all the time, so it breaks down glucose to get energy all the time, day and night. Okay, as we said before, photosynthesis is a process which is mainly done in the leaves inside the chloroplast. So how are the leaves adapted to do its job? First of all, the leaves are broad or flat to capture a lot of sunlight. It contains veins to carry water from the roots to the leaves and to carry the food that the leaves do to all the plant parts. And also it supports the plant. It contains chloroplast that contains chlorophyll to trap the sunlight, and it also contains stomata, which are tiny holes to allow the gas exchange, to allow the gases to get in and out. For example, it allows the carbon dioxide to enter, to be used in photosynthesis, and it allows the oxygen to go out of it. Okay, let's have a trip inside the leaf and see what is inside the leaf. So this is the internal structure of the leaf. What is inside the leaf? How do the leaf looks from inside? What are the different uh, tissues and cells present inside the leaves? First of all, you have the cuticle, the waxy cuticle. This cuticle, it prevents the water loss. It's also transparent to allow the sunlight to pass through it. So its job is to prevent the water loss. It's as if you're covering the leaf with a layer of wax to prevent the water loss. Under the cuticle, we have the upper epidermis, and we have also down the lower epidermis. The epidermis job is to protect the inner cells. Okay, they don't do photosynthesis because they do not contain chloroplast, but they are transparent to allow the sunlight to pass through it and reach the lower cells. So its job is mainly for protection. Under the epidermis, we have the palisade layer, which is made up of palisade cells. They contain a lot of chloroplast to do photosynthesis, and they are also very thin and tightly packed so that you can have a lot of them, and they have a large surface area to trap more sunlight, and they are thin so that the sunlight can enter through them very easy. Under the palisade, we have the spongy layer. They are irregular cells. They also do photosynthesis, but they contain less chloroplast than the palisade, so they don't do uh, photosynthesis as palisade. The palisade cells do more photosynthesis. Also, they have a lot of air spaces between them, and this is where the air uh, diffuses and goes in and out. So all those spaces are air spaces between the spongy cells. Okay, where the air is um, exchanged. Okay. After that, we have the vein inside the leaf. We also call it vascular bundle. It contains a lot of tubes. Some of those tubes carry water. We call them xylem. Other tubes carry the food or the glucose. We call them phloem. We have also in the lower epidermis the guard cells that open and close to create holes between them called stomata. These holes allow for the gas exchange. So the carbon dioxide can enter through the holes and the oxygen can go out during photosynthesis. Not only the carbon dioxide and the water, and the oxygen are exchanged, it's also the water vapor. So some of the water evaporates in the air spaces here and then diffuses out of the leaf through the hole, which is called the stomach. Okay, so this is how the leaf looks internally. So let's have another look. This is the palisade, and this is the spongy. This is the vascular bundle containing the xylem and phloem, and this is the stomata surrounded by the guard cells. How do the gas exchange happen? The carbon dioxide enters through the stomata into the air spaces and then diffuses into the spongy cells and the palisade cells. And the oxygen diffuses out of the palisade and the spongy into the air spaces and then out of the leaf through the stomata. So the guard cells around the stomata open and close to open and close the stomata. Not only the gases, carbon dioxide and oxygen that goes out of the stomata, it's also the water vapor. It can go out through the stomata. the water evaporates into the air spaces and then diffuses out of the stomach. So first the water evaporates from the spongy cells and the palisade cells into the air spaces and then diffuses outside the leaf through the stomach. Let's try to label the leaf. We have here the waxy cuticle, the upper epidermis, the palisade layer, and the spongy layer. They are called together the mesophyll layer. The mesophyll means middle layer, so they are called the mesophyll layer as they are the middle layer of the leaf. We have here the air spaces, the vascular bundle containing the xylem and phloem. Always the xylem looks or points upward. Uh, it's nearer to the palisade so that the water can enter quickly to the palisade cells for photosynthesis. And here we have the chloroplasts inside the palisade. This is called the lower epidermis, which contains the guard cells and the stomata. One whole is called stoma, and the plural is stomata, and this is the the waxy cuticle below the lower epidermis. Okay, so which labels the waxy cuticle? It's A. Okay, which one the palisade cells? It's C. Which one labels the spongy mesophyll cells or the spongy cells? It's D. Which label shows the stomata or the stoma? It's E. Which labels contains a lot of chloroplast to absorb as much light as possible or to trap as much light as possible? It is C, because the palisade are the main cells responsible for photosynthesis. Most of the photosynthesis happens in the palisade layer. Which label is used to reduce the water loss? It is A, which is the waxy cuticle. And we also can do this matching exercise. And that's for today. We learned about photosynthesis process, the equation of photosynthesis, where do the mass of the trees come from, and we explained the internal structure of the leaf. Thank you very much and see you next time, inshallah.